Keaton, how's it going? We scheduled this chit chat today intentionally because we knew that the Bank of Canada was going to make an interest rate announcement today. Now, me, like every other investor out there with a variable mortgage, was praying to the Bank of Canada gods that they would announce a decrease in rate or at least no increase. That was wishful thinking. We know that's not what happened. So, Keaton, let's talk. Let's talk interest rates. What's going on out there?
Believe it or not, we actually got lucky. The market was predicting a 0.75% increase. So, hey, 0.5%'s a little bit of a win, silver linings. But today, payments went up roughly $30 per month per 100,000 that you owe. And buyers lost about 5% of their buying power. Now, one of the interesting things that I've been digging into, James, is that complex investors are being hit harder than regular homeowners and newer investors. So there's some really interesting opportunities starting to pop up.
What do you mean by complex investors hit harder? Can you elaborate?
So in the last 9 months, we as Canadians have lost about 30% of our residential purchasing power. So we
Yeah.
qualify for about 30% less than we did before. But that is on the purchase due to the qualifying rate and the stress test.
Mm-hmm,
What people
mm-hmm.
aren't considering is that the more properties you own, it magnifies the impact of these rising rates. So if you own 3 rental properties and you've either had fixed rates renew or you're in adjustable rate mortgages or lines of credit where your cost is going up per month and your payments
Right.
are going up, the impact of the rising rates is being magnified. So we're seeing a lot of complex investors having the door shut on them.
Mm-hmm.
It's creating some opportunities where they're not scooping up the deals out there right now. And we're starting to see them pop up because a lot of people are, maybe not jumping ship, but they're realizing, I'm going to hedge my bets, I'm going to sell. And they're really leaning towards moving product quickly. So we're seeing these opportunities. And a lot of junior investors are realizing that there's not the big sharks aren't competing with them right now because they can't.
Yeah.
So it's actually quite interesting.
Well, that's a good segue into what I want to talk about, which is, you're one of 3 people if you're active in the market right now. You're a buyer, which means you're looking for your home. You're a seller, which means you're looking to sell your home. Or number 3, you're an investor, which means you're looking for an opportunity to add something to your portfolio. So let's work our way backwards because we're already chatting investors. For our investors out there, like what are we looking for heading into the next 90 days? You're talking about seeing these opportunities because you know what? There are people who are holding properties who are like, you know what? I'm already negative cash flowing. That extra $40 per 100,000 now that the rate is increased, like it's not going to get better. I might as well just take this property, liquidate it, and stop the negative cash flow. So, when are you thinking that like there's a lag? It's not like interest rates went up today and we feel the effect tomorrow. There's going to be time where this is going to sink in and people are going to make decisions. What does that lag time look like, and when do you think the best time to really start taking action is going to be?
I think we're going to start to see people reacting from these changes roughly 30 to 180 days out, depending on the situation, and
Right.
really depending on what happens with rates over the next 2 or 3 increases. Where I really see the opportunity personally is, and this goes against the grain, but it's not investing for cash flow. It's not investing to, can I get the property for 20 grand cheaper? Because both those things are subjective to property values and rates. Where I'm really seeing opportunities and where I'm looking to invest myself is looking for that long-term value. Properties where
Right.
the OCP is changing and we can redevelop potentially in the future. Double wide lots where we can tear down, subdivide, build skinnies. Things that have value that will persist regardless of what rates or
Yeah.
values do. And I know that you operate in a very similar way, James, but that's really where I see the opportunity is that
I
long-term tangible value.
I couldn't agree more. And the reason that I'm going to build on what you're saying there, the reason I think that's important is because market shifts like this usually equate to short-term pain. A lot of times in it, people think short-term as like a week of pain or a month of pain. In real estate, short-term means like 12 to 24 months in the big picture of your 30, 40-year portfolio horizon. So, in this short-term pain, if you have a strategy to mitigate the challenges of this short-term pain, picking up properties that will always make sense in the long term, like you said, good locations based on rezoning, good pieces of land. In Edmonton terms, pieces of property that are close to where the LRT is going, that makes a lot of sense. So take advantage of the fact that there are going to be people who need to sell because of the short-term pain, but focus on assets that make sense in any market. I really like that advice. Let's switch into our buyers. You're looking at buying a home. There's going to be two types of people out there: people who have a rate locked in and people who don't. So what is your advice for both people, and how should they approach the next 6 to 12 months of looking to get that home?
Well, for those with the rate hold, it's real simple. Does it expire far enough out that you could buy a property? And what is the value of that rate hold? So if there's, let's say, a 0.5% difference, let's say you've got 5% held and market rates are 5.5%. We can look at the size of your mortgage and the difference in interest rates and say, hey, that's worth $25,000 to you. And you can know that whatever you buy is on sale for $25,000 compared to waiting a few weeks or a few months, whatever it is for the expiry.
Yeah.
But I think ultimately, rate hold or not, rates rising, it really depends on why are you buying? Do you need to, you're having a baby, you need a bigger home? Well, you're either buying or you're renting.
Yeah.
And I think that this is a unique opportunity where there's not a ton of buyers competing with you. And we know that demand is building up. So we know at some point it's going to balance out, and that, yes, prices may be a little lower, but there's also going to be a lot more competition. And the real estate market doesn't always behave in as simple of a way as we would like. So I think it's really important to look at your needs and look at what you can get. And don't be greedy, be practical.
Yeah, I agree. And you know what? If you're already thinking you might want to get something, just see what you can do to get that proper deal before your rate hold runs out. Because, it's nice to save a bit of money if you can. Now, the people that we're having real conversations with, like at Mogul, we've got in the ballpark of 40 active listings right now. And so we knew the interest rates were going to be changing today. We planned on doing some outreach to our listing clients. We got to give them advice that is practical in today's market. And we pride ourselves on giving people factual information, whether or not that news is good or bad news. So, you know where I'm going with this, Keaton. What are you seeing the conversation looking like for sellers right now?
On my end, the conversation boils down to, do you need to sell? Yes or no? And if the answer is yes, then we need to be very practical. The changing realtors isn't going to change it. Having a good realtor is very important who understands the market, but a realtor doesn't do a magic dance in front of the property and make it sell for $30,000 more than the identical.
I wish we could.
And I think if you need to sell, if you have a high degree of motivation, you need to be practical. And either you do something that makes your property unique, or you price your property to make it unique. And I know that nobody likes dropping your price, but the reality is I'm watching a group of very distressed clients constantly kick the ball just behind what's actually happening. So every time they accept they need to make an adjustment, it's already too late. The adjustments move further. Because in many markets, we are seeing a gradual decline in values. And I think you have to work with someone who's going to be honest and real with you as a listing agent and going to tell you the truth, not what you want to hear, but they're going to take the real information of the market and give you a professional interpretation and say, this is your goal. This is what I professionally suggest. And you're not going to like it, but you should be grateful they're telling you the truth rather than telling you what you want to hear. And then you get in a worse position.
I'm going to reiterate something that Keaton said, because he put a lot of really smart points into a very short amount of words there. And it's the kicking the can down the road. I'm going to articulate that from a realtor's perspective a little more clearly. So right now, the absorption rate is about 20%, which means 4 houses are not selling for every 1 house that is. And so in order to be the 1 house that is selling, it's super, super important to be competitive on price. So what often ends up happening is, on a day like today, people who are already a little overpriced will say, okay, let's drop it by 10,000, even though really it's already 10,000 overpriced. So should we be talking about dropping it 20,000, or do we make the brave decision to drop it by 30,000? If you drop it by 10, now you're 10K too late. Everybody else is dropping 10. You're still 10K behind. Guess what? You're one of the 4 out of 5 that isn't selling. If you drop it by 20K, now you're in line with everybody who has dropping at 10K. You're kind of keeping up with the pack, but still only 1 in 5 is going to sell. So the people who are selling, that 1 in 5, are the ones that aren't just dropping the price to market. They're actively and proactively getting ahead of the market by dropping ahead of the pack. that one that's selling is ahead of the pack. So that's what Keaton says by kicking the can down the road is don't just keep up with the market in terms of your price reductions. You actually have to get a little bit ahead of it so that you're selling now and not incurring 2, 3, 4 months of carrying costs while you're just keeping up with the pack of price drops. It's a very difficult decision to make. It's a very uncomfortable decision to make. But if you want to offload that property and if the carrying costs are giving you trouble, get it done. It's like an analogy I like to use with my clients. It's a little bit graphic, but it's like, imagine you have an infection in your foot and the doctor says, look, we got to cut this thing off at the knee. And you look at it and you're like, well, I don't see any infection in my knee. Let's cut it off at the shin. And then sure enough, here we are a month later and it's like, well, it's in the knee. And now we got to cut you off at the hip. Like cut it off at the knee now before you have to cut it off at the hip later. It's a little graphic, it's a little gory, but for sellers who need to sell, like you have to be ahead of the market. Don't kick the can down the road. That's my tip.
If you're trying to sell right now and if your agent has not had a conversation like this with you in very practical and very real terms, I think you need to start questioning some decisions and some choices you've made, because if you need to sell, you need to be having these practical conversations. That's what I love about James is he doesn't pull his punches. He's real, he's professional, and he's honest.
Hey, thanks for the little pump up there, Keaton. But you know what? Let's take that real talk and flip it back around to our buyers and our investors. Knowing that some realtors are having those conversations with their sellers. If you're a buyer to that seller, we see opportunity. So, put up your antennas, get your glasses out. That bad news is meant to scare you. But when other people are scared and not taking action, if you're the one taking action, typically you come out pretty ahead, which is a good thing. So Keaton, thank you so much for taking time out of your busy day. I know that on rate increase days, your phone blows up because you have so many clients that trust you, your opinion, and your knowledge. You've got a lot of people asking, what do I do? So I'm going to let you get back to those calls because I know you have a lot of clients to service today with it being a high conversation day. And I just appreciate you taking out the time to talk to us about what to do in this current market condition.
Anytime, man. Always a pleasure.
Take care, buddy.
Cheers.